States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody. Okay, all are present. Number one.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes with the amendment of, I guess it's on the third page of minutes. 2/3 of the way down, it says, motion by Commissioner Arnold to accept any price negotiated for tax claim bureau, blah, blah, blah. And it was per the recommendation of Treasurer Jason Miller. If that could be added, please.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. So carried. Item number 2.
Make a motion to approve item number 2 is listed on the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Arnold, approve item 2 on the agenda. Ratify, approve the following cash disbursements or electronic payments. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So carried. Item number 3.
Make a motion to approve item number 3 is listed on the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Arnold, to approve item 3 on the agenda to ratify or approve the following seminar requests and or payments for seminar requests. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 4.
Make a motion to approve item number 4 is listed on the agenda.
I'll second that.
A motion by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Arnold to approve item 4, to ratify and accept with regret the resignation of Jesse Prue from the position of Deputy Sheriff. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 5.
Make a motion to approve item number 5, and I think that we wanted to change the date to March 11th, 2020 was agreed upon. Unfortunately, we'll have to accept it.
A motion by Commissioner Warren. Do we have a
I'll second it begrudgingly.
Motion by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Arnold to approve item 5 to accept with a lot of regret the resignation of Martin Kane from the position of Chief Clerk effective March 11th, 2019. Questions or comments? And just so you know, he's going into retirement. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So carried. Item number 6.
Make a motion to approve item number 6 is listed on the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Arnold to approve item 6, to ratify and approve the termination of James Weatherall from the position of Corrections Officer effective February 19, 2019, for the recommendation of Warden Schelt. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Item number 7.
Make a motion to approve item number 7 is listed on the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Arnold, to approve item 7 on the agenda to sign an agreement with Blue Jeans Network Incorporated out of Mountain View, California, to provide hosted video conferencing services at a cost of $93.49.20 for a 1-year period beginning March 11, 2019, per the recommendation of President Judge Jason Legg. I will note there that they've secured grant funding to pay probably 90% of that. Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So carried. Item number 8.
Make a motion to approve item number 8 is listed on the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Arnold, approve item 8 on the agenda to sign an agreement to the addendum to the original NG 911 telephone system and e-signet professional services agreement dated 3/8/2017 to provide continued services for assessment, acquisition, implementation, verification, training, and project management services, text to 911 implementation, rapid SOS, and on and on and on, at cost of $52,500 to be paid out of FEMA's 15% funding grant, which means it all gets paid out of that. Any questions or comments? Just so everyone knows, that's for the upgrade in our telephone system for the 911 center. All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Item number 10.
Make a motion to approve item number 10 is listed on the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Warren, signed by Commissioner Arnold, to sign a purchase of services agreement between Susquehanna County Services for Children and Youth and Cornell Abracus Group Incorporated in Pittsburgh, PA. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Item 10.
Make a motion to approve item number 10 is listed on the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Arnold, to approve item 10, sign a purchase of service agreement between Susquehanna County Services for Children and Youth and Children's Service Center of Wyoming Valley Incorporated in Wilkes-Barre. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 11.
Make a motion to approve item number 11 is listed on the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Arnold, to approve item 11, to sign the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development Community Block Grant Program and contract in the amount of $254,298. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Okay, number 12.
Make a motion to approve item number 12 is listed on the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Arnold, approve item 12 to exonerate the Susquehanna County tax collectors from the collecting of county 2018 delinquent county returns in the amount of $482,921.33 per the recommendation of Treasurer Miller. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Item 13.
Make a motion to approve item number 13 is listed on the agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Arnold, to approve item 13 on the agenda to adopt proclamation 2018-02 proclaiming March 2019 as Colon Cancer Awareness Month in Susquehanna County. Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're at public comment. Anybody got anything?
Just like to say, we lost a long-time county employee, and it's a real shame in the way it happened. Eleanor, I'm talking about.
Now that you brought it up, yes, Eleanor Krosky, who was in our Assistant Director of Planning, unfortunately passed away unexpectedly last weekend. She was over a 30-year veteran of the county, and we will miss her, and our hearts all go out to the family and that are dealing with her loss. So thank you. I think Tony's here. Tony, you got Tony is from the Progress Authority. Tony handles handles a good portion of our economic development. I think you got a little bit of an update for us.
Sure, I just wanted to give you, just kind of, I got a little bit of information there for you guys too. I just wanted to take a few minutes and just talk a little bit about the Progress Authority and the relationship with Susquehanna County over the years, and give you an update as to where we're going and some of the things that I think are really critical to the county at this point. I just to give you a little bit of history for those that don't really recognize what's happened is, much like a lot of areas that there were in 1993, a lot of communities, local municipalities in the counties felt that there wasn't a lot of effectiveness with regards to economic development where the tire meets the road, kind of a local, rural, if you will, perspective. That's when some local business people, small business people, and some larger business people decided to band together and form our authority back then. And then what happened was it was a local group. It grew, had some success with regards to investment in the region. And the county, Bradford County at the time, came to us and said, we like what you're doing. We don't have a county, a good county effort, if you will. And we took that on, we expanded. And then that was around 2003. And then in 2005, Susquehanna County came to us and said, we heard about you guys, we like what you're doing, we see how you operate, you're small, you're efficient, and you have a pretty good impact. And that happened in 2005. So since that time, there's been quite a bit of activity. Just to give you an idea, and not to spend too much time on the authority, is that we are a IDA, Industrial Development Authority, Industrial Incorporation, and a General Purpose Authority, all chartered for certain reasons in the state of Pennsylvania, mostly to help leverage financing and bring investment in the community. And when I say investment, That's critical. That's economic development. I mean, if somebody wanted to argue with me, what's first and foremost in economic development, it's leveraging investment first, private investment, by utilizing maybe public, resources. That could be funding sources to state, federal, local, to help encourage business and development and investment in the community. And that yields jobs, ultimately. That's how I believe it has to happen. But again, the rural model, when we became part of Susquehanna County, we actually had bolstered and built a local revolving loan fund, some monies that came in different forms or different grants that could be reused and reloaned, and we extended that $4 million effort into Susquehanna County, and it's been useful. Again, the critical component to this has been the fact that, if you have to look at the counties, each county has a great individual, if you will, strength. In many cases, Bradford County has larger industries. In Susquehanna County, it's small business. It's truly small business. That's the backbone. And our history, if you go through it, of involvement is involving small businesses. The other thing that's a great resource here, not only is that the natural beauty, but the proximity to other markets, but there's an interstate here. There's a strong rail presence. That's unlike a lot of areas throughout the northern tier anyway. So. We're blessed with those things that we have to try to bolster, and maybe we can consider some of that underutilized. We are subject to an advisory board that is appointed by the commissioners, and I kind of reviewed that advisory board the other day, and that I'm going to say that I was looking at it the other day, and I was going to say that most of the members of the 9 members of the advisory board, maybe a few of them I'm not certain of, but most of them are from small business elements. Yeah, they all relate to it in some way, and that is directly related to what Susquehanna County's key and core components are. So it's been a great relationship with them. We take advisement from them, and we actually, what I want to mention too is that we also are looking at putting together a new work program. Every year we put together a very detailed work program that identifies key issues in the county, tries to spread that across, and I got a new format for that, which I'm gonna, tomorrow actually is our Economic Development Advisory Board meeting, and we'll present that tomorrow, but actually measures, helps justify what we work on, the focus that we work on, the importance of it, but also tries to measure it, that at the end of the year, somebody could say, hey, how'd you do with this? Why didn't it happen, or why did it happen, and what can we do to kind of make that, to move that along? One of the things that we've been able to do is we've completed several studies, and I'm looking at another scope of work here soon for a new study for this county, but we've completed both a housing study and a site study. The best look at the county, obviously there was a housing impact when natural gas came, and there's been a need for market rate housing throughout this region. But we looked at areas that might be best. And when I say that, both from a site standpoint with regards to business development, infrastructure has always been a challenge in the county. Rural counties just have a lack of infrastructure. And one of the things that's really kind of an assumption, and I've met with many companies and businesses that come into the area that are looking to relocate, is they think here in Susquehanna County we're land rich. And to a certain extent we are, but from another standpoint, there's not an overabundance of usable sites. And what I mean by that is that there's not critical infrastructure to those sites. And what I'm talking about is sites that have actual sewer, water. There's topographic features. Obviously, if you go from Great Bend to Hot Bottom, you're going to find very few locations that are large enough or have the support, if you will, natural gas. And obviously, top of the list right now is connectivity. We all know that the county suffers from poor connectivity in some areas, okay, in areas that aren't as marketable, if you will, or they're not high density to a certain extent. So we're working on that, and I'll mention that here in a second. We are focusing on the 81 corridor. The other thing I wanted to mention too is that we've had several looks from agricultural companies that are looking to expand into this region. Large ag producers, we had an egg producer that looked, and we were challenged with trying to find a site for them because they bring traditionally their footprint which is in the Midwest, they think they could just plop it down here. Well, it doesn't work. So it means that they're gonna have to break that up into maybe smaller segments of something that works for them, and that kind of takes a lot of time, and again, the infrastructure piece. But knowing that, we recognize that both, value-added, vertical integration, if you will, making cheese, making ice cream, making furniture out of wood, out of our wood resource business, natural gas, vertical integration with regards to power generation and other product development, is really what we need to focus on, because that adds investment and of course adds value in this area before it leaves the area. We don't want to treat Susquehanna County like a third world country and just harvest our resources and, send them on other places. So that's sort of what I'm focusing on as the next level, if you will, of evaluation and study for the county. And I'm
But
working on
Tony, don't you agree that, part of the problem that we have with this is again, we go back to the topography of the landscape and the ability to bring, those types of entities in here?
I can tell you, I've beaten the pavement. We've knocked on doors. We've talked to people about, locations and sites, and we've worked with site developers, and it is a challenge. There's just no two ways about that. We have, in many ways, we have the river, but it does provide a lot of floodplain in that regard too. But again, the infrastructure piece, level land, there is some, but it doesn't exist. And you can see some things going along the 81 corridor right now where they're actually doing quite a bit of earthwork to balance a site to try to make them useful for job creation, business development, investment in those locations. But you're absolutely right. I mean, like I said, from Great Bend to Hot Bottom, try to run that corridor, see what's useful down there. It doesn't take very long, but between, topography, meaning that hillsides, and access to good utilities is a challenge. And many of the projects sort of revolve around those kinds of things. One of the things I wanted to mention too is we work closely with sister agencies. This SBDC, the Small Business Development Center at the University of Scranton, the Northeast Pennsylvania Industrial Resource Center, which is another group, and of course Northern Tier. We work with them on maybe some financing, maybe some federal funds, and that forms an organization called PREP, which is Partners for Regional Economic Performance. So there's a lot more resources that are at our hand, our fingertips to be utilized here in the region. If I could just there's two major issues, okay, that we're finding in going door to door and meeting with businesses. I don't care, and and some of it's national, but it's a real critical component around here, and they're side by side. I can't say one's over top of the other at this point, but it's workforce and it's connectivity. Those two pieces are the mantra of every business that you go to. It used to be things like China, healthcare, security, financing, all these different issues. They're not to say that they're not important, but what's taken primacy over that is both workforce and connectivity. So on the workforce side, we've been working very closely, and one of the things that Susquehanna County is blessed with, other counties don't have, is of course the Elk Lake Career and Tech Center. Alice Davis does a heck of a job down there. She's got it going on, sort of got it figured out, okay? And it's a great resource. In fact, we've been meeting with her. We just did a complete tour of all their facilities and all the kinds of things. They are very professional from top to bottom, so we're very fortunate to have that in the county. But the other thing that we've been trying to do is introduce businesses to schools. One of the things that's sort of an interesting element is that with all the school districts that we have in the region, they don't have a strong relationship with businesses. And that's one thing that businesses really identify. So we've been trying to expose superintendents in schools to key business people throughout the region, and it's having some effect. We also have looked at traditional workforce programs, and they're not working. They just simply aren't meeting the need, and we're looking at trying to make recommendations to the counties with regards to what we see as key problems and what needs to be addressed from the standpoint of workforce investment and all those types of things that we, as a Progress Authority, don't traditionally get involved, but we have to get involved, because I'm going to tell you one thing, is that when I sit down with a small business owner and they identify that as a problem, I'm at least going to go back to them and say, here's some steps that are being taken to help resolve that issue. The other thing that is an issue, which is this connectivity issue that we talk about. You know, the world's sort of passing us by, no doubt about it. Everybody needs it, whether you like it or not, but we're seeing at the top of the realm runs public safety. And with good connectivity, you can increase public safety, your 911 network, and everything is fed by fiber. And if you can develop a fiber network, and we've got history with this right now, but if you can develop the backbone, build the sections that the last mile providers are not willing to invest in, because the rural dilemma is too many miles of road and not enough people to make it make a business plan work as a result of it. We've got to take the lead in doing that, and you'll find, I think it'll be out here soon in the paper, that there is an RFP, Stacy's nodding, request for proposals for that. We've been able to secure about $275,000 to utilize towards studying that for the area. Now, it's not just another study, it goes into the roots of looking at how we can put this pipeline, if you will, unlit fiber, black, we would call it dark fiber, so that we would allow any IP, any ISP service provider to connect to and provide to the home, okay, or business or whatever. But keep in mind, the key component to this is public safety. So tower improvements are number one, and number two, anything that's fed by fiber does a lot better and will be a lot better useful. Cell towers, microwave towers, wireless communication, which is a true, if you will, a portion of the solution. Let me give you an example. It's not reasonable to think that you're going to sewer all of Susquehanna County, and the same thing exists for running fiber to everybody's home. But wireless communication is a possibility of getting areas of low density. If it's fed by fiber, line of sight, you can get in there and improve those locations dramatically. So, you know, it's a tall task, but I think once we do the site-specific, if you will, the unique look at Susquehanna County, we'll have a better handle on trying to find ways to improve that. Now, the timing's kind of good because it seems like there's a lot of funding out there now that's sort of rolling out through the governor, whether it's Restore Pennsylvania, the USDA, and the federal government. So they all recognize it. But I'm going to tell you that nobody has a true solution, because traditionally these funds have gone to last mile providers who have just utilized them for their own purposes. It's got to be a network that doesn't allow anyone to monopolize it, and that's absolutely true. So we're excited about it, and you'll hear definitely more about that in the upcoming future. There's no doubt about it. We're on the right track with that. The last thing I wanted to mention was obviously this work program for this year, which we've got a new draft. It's kind of a matrix format, and again, we'll be reviewing that, the initial draft, with the Economic Development Advisory Board and the commissioners tomorrow. So once we get it kind of polished up. It's a little redundancy in it because a lot of things with economic development overlap, but we continue to focus on infrastructure. And the one thing I wanted to mention is that we did, you know, we're a small organization, so we don't keep a lot of metrics, but we did do a compilation of some of the things that have happened over the years with regards to most recently. And what we could recall, Chris and I and Kim went through our files, and I think it leveraged about $14 million into Susquehanna County, and then of course lists all of the relationships we have with you know, related boards. We also, one other thing that's more recent is that there's a small business development task force. It's actually called the Susquehanna County Business Initiative Task Force, and we've been working with them that have kind of welcomed new small businesses, done ribbon cuttings. I know Stacy's been involved with that. And we're excited about that too, because it gives a little bit more exposure as to the small businesses that are in the county.
Tony, I look over the list that you gave us here of the loans and stuff, and I see a lot of small businesses that are new businesses, plus some of the businesses that were here that you've helped too. So, you know, I'm looking, there's like $1.7 million just in helping those people there.
Yeah, I mean, there's, you know, the thing is you gotta do the mom and pops and take on the large ones. You know, how many times have we entertained a large interest that never happened? But those local small businesses are here. You know, they're the ones, you know, they're your bread and butter, so to speak. So, you know, a small grocery store is important to a little community. okay? They employ a lot of people. So that, we don't disregard that at all. And then there's also, what's interesting in the county too is there's a kind of a cluster of unique, if you will, machining operations. And they're kind of a spin-off, that's a regional issue, but they're spin-offs of larger industries throughout the region, both coming out of New York and Pennsylvania, that we've also been supportive of over the years too.
I also see, of course, something that's always near and dear is the hospitals, and of course the Endless Mountain Health System. You guys were a big part of that, just like the
Yeah,
commissioners
we
were.
did, we worked with the RCAP on that, and, God bless Ray Wilmarth, I mean, he was a driving force behind them. I met him many years ago. His heart was in it. Of course, Rex and Lauren, we have an IP, don't ask me what the acronym stands for, but it's a state program that every year returns about $50,000 a year to the hospital.
Right.
It has to do with reimbursing them on the interest paid on the USDA loan. And that's still ongoing. Actually, we're doing the year-end request for that right now, so.
Right. I know we were apart, and I can't remember the exact number, maybe you can, I think it was before Elizabeth was here, but we did the bridge loan for the hospital to get them up and running before they could get the USDA. I think that was $1 million or $2 million that we went on the hook for that, to get that going.
You did that, and the other issue too is that they had a capital, a capital budget piece, which I think they've leveraged about $3 million. I think there's a $10 million, and they were
Right.
looking at, and we've been seriously looking at phase 3, okay, which gives them offices and different operatories and different types of treatments, dialysis, things of that nature. Physical therapy, yeah, different things like that.
Well, I think another thing that's been big to us in the last couple of years is the program we've worked with you on, which is the small water and sewer grants.
Yeah, we were
We've been
fortunate.
very successful in
Yeah, we were
that.
very fortunate. The first year was kind of easy. It was undersubscribed. We got a couple. We Hartford, a few other ones, and then we applied last year. We were able to receive 3, which I'm not aware of a county in the region that got 3 of those, and they amounted to about over $700,000. And they're really useful. Bridgewater Township got one. I know that there was a few other ones that we applied for. It's on that list.
Yeah, it's showing 1.1 million.
Okay, 1.1.
Hartford,
includes
Bridgewater,
Hartford,
New
yeah.
Milford, yeah.
And they're very useful. They're up to $500,000. They're for projects that don't exceed $500,000. They can't be part of a bigger project, but we've done things like replacing grinder pumps, things of that
Right.
nature that would be right on the backbone of
Right.
the user. Yeah.
One of the things that's always, been in the front line of everybody's thinking today is because of our land and, where we've come from is farming. And we know that for many years, our farms were shrinking, just because of the economics of it. You had, the state of California that was subsidizing the milk prices in California, so their prices were like half of ours, and that was creating a big problem for our milk prices here, and still is, and Vermont was doing the same thing. But, I think what we see now is we see not only those farms starting to turn around, the ones we have, but now we're seeing more organic things happen. Is that true?
There's a lot. It's interesting. Penn State came out with some data more recently about the counties in the Northern Tier region, the larger ag producers in the area. Now, we know milk prices are devastating, and it's a continual fight, but we are seeing, turn in niche businesses, a lot of beef cattle. We're seeing, obviously, the traditional stuff like maple syrup and all kinds of things like that. But what was really interesting about their data was that the counties with natural gas have some of the highest production. And they attribute that to the fact that, for a lot of reasons, one, obviously putting revenue in the hands of farmers, and they, traditionally they reinvest that, and they're seeing them putting in buildings, buying more land, they're seeing them buy equipment, those kinds of things. But also, what's relatively interesting is the fact that it's kept land in large parcels, which is conducive to agriculture. And again, over time, we will see an emphasis, because the market for agriculture is the megalopolis, the East Coast. We have more people in demand of agricultural products within earshot of Susquehanna County than you do in the Midwest. The other critical component that I believe is that there's water here. That's a real issue. in other parts of the United States right now.
Well, we had a lot of water last year.
Too much.
Okay, we got water.
Maybe I should take that back. Yeah, too much water here, okay? Yeah. But anyway, that's, from what I can see, and honestly, I have a brother who lives out in Kansas, and that's an issue. I'm a little infatuated with that large farming stuff they have out there. But point being is that it's a real challenge for them. And I think we're a little bit more stable. And we have ag services here still. They're not gone, so.
Right.
It's an interesting element that investment has led to improvements throughout the region, and what was thought to be maybe detrimental to agriculture has been a positive to agriculture.
I do know that, we've had some contact by a couple individuals. Of course, the hemp thing is the latest, and I had a gentleman call, and he was looking. He had to have a minimum of 500 acres,
Right.
with mostly meadows, so that he could put the hemp in. And I said, listen, 500 connected acres with meadows in this county is like impossible to find. Between all the mountains and all the trees, we just don't have that much bare land connected together. And what his response to me, which I found interesting, he said, listen, the only way you can survive in this hemp business is if you have 500 acres. He says, the problem you have right now, it's all about supply and demand and economics. He says, right now the supply is down, the demand is high, so the prices are up. So you can go out with a 100-acre piece or 50-acre piece and try and do something today, but he says, once the supply comes up and equals the demand or goes above the demand, then you're gonna have, the prices will drop significantly.
You'll need the volume.
And you'll need the volume in order to stay in business.
Yeah, and it's an interesting dilemma. I mean, I tell you the truth, I wish I had $1 for every time I've led a parade like that, but there was a contingency of Koreans here at one time, many years ago, that had an interpreter. They were looking for ginseng because it has the characteristics they're looking for.
Right.
It's unusual, but I think as the world turns, we're going to see more and more emphasis on those kinds of things. But again, stabilization in the market. Market has a lot to do with, even on the natural gas front, from the standpoint of value-added products. It depends on what's going on in the world and pricing and demand, and that's why. A lot of times you'll see those things may not happen because the investments are so large. They're
Right.
giant investments.
Right.
So you better be sure of your market going into that. I mean, it's not tens of millions, it's hundreds of millions of dollars these people are looking to bring.
Right. Well, I do know that, everything is kind of connected together. That's why we've done so many studies with you. We did the housing study, which come back and said, listen, a lot of our housing stock in this county is old and outdated. We need new housing stock. We knew we had a shortage of housing for, the newlyweds, the people just getting married, just starting out, something reasonable for them. But also the single floor ranch homes for the people that are getting 55 to 60 that want to still be independent and want their own place, but still want the 2 or 3 story house that they're in. We know there's a huge shortage. And I thought one of the interesting things was that housing study pointed out that Hartford was probably a prime area for a good housing development, being right off the exit.
And some of it, right there in that area, some Hartford area, infrastructure played a key component to that. Obviously, access to the interstate, proximity to markets where people may go to Binghamton or the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre area from the standpoint of work or
Right.
or shopping. But housing is interesting. We have to try to continually update that. The useful aspect of that is that produced some of the best data that we've ever seen for this county, number one. And number two, it's useful from the standpoint of trying to leverage either private investors to come to the area and say, look, we've studied it, we've got it figured out. And two, maybe there's some state dollars and federal dollars that might be useful for certain types of housing that we might be able to help with too. So that database, I've always said that these rural counties, the demographics stink. We just don't have good data, simply because, and I'll be honest with you, is that during the censuses when they do them, they kind of glaze the area over. They don't, we don't have high density. We don't have the traditional programs that they can go to count people like you do in urban areas, okay?
Right.
Even from a standpoint of building, permitting, I mean, we're more rural, we're spread out more. So what I experienced when I was county planner many years ago, but is that the census came in, and I had census takers come to me and say, look, they were told just to wrap it up. Let's get it wrapped up, figure out, do the best you can. So that data, a lot of that data doesn't truly reflect a lot of things that what I contend is what I continue to contend is we have to do it ourselves. We've got to pull ourselves by our own bootstraps, like empowering ourselves with the revolving loan fund, leveraging funds, grants, commissioners getting involved in projects like the infrastructure, like down Route 29, which wasn't going to happen without that kind of support, So even though there is possibilities of getting things, they're becoming more and more difficult to try to access to, and empowering your own communities is the best way to go.
Well, and you're right, and I think the other study that really opened our eyes was the trying to look at a business park and doing the business park study. When we went through and that study, and you look at it, you find out that really there is no good site in this county between the infrastructure of water and sewer, and of course the big one, the storm runoff. That basically the study come back and said, listen, the investment it would take to do something outweighs what the benefits would be. That there is no real great spot to put a business park into.
And then part of that too is the interests. When you really look at someone trying to make an investment in that regard, obviously you look at the site and the site development, and of course the investment they'd have to make for the building and land, whatever equipment, machinery equipment and all that they'd have to have. I'm not saying it can't happen, because I think it will ultimately, we'll get something because of that 81 corridor, but you're correct. It becomes not as attractive as going into some of the urban markets where there's existing buildings that are all over the place. And look at the Binghamton market. I mean,
Right.
Other than being not business friendly, now we are finding that there's a lot of interest in looking into Pennsylvania because it's more business friendly, from that standpoint. So.
Well, what we also find too is a lot of the businesses like Dick's that had the opportunity to come here,
They gave the store
when it comes down to the bottom line, and they're getting a $70 million or $80 million tax break, which we can't do, then they end up in New York State.
It's
It's like Amazon.com.
Right.
Binghamton's making a plead for that now. The last I knew, that was like a $250 million tax break.
It's absolutely true. The thing that we had to deal with was that when you sort of hit rock bottom economically, you really see the incentives go way up, okay?
Right.
And we just have not only do we not have the legislative luxury of doing some of the things that they do, we just haven't been that desperate, okay?
Right.
But to tell you the truth, that there are people in this county looking for people like yours. There has been expansions, business opportunities to expand and take on more, and they won't do it because they don't think they can get the workforce.
Right.
And that's a heck of a situation to be in,
Yeah, I do know that, and it all ties together. When you talk about the housing study, the business park study, the broadband study, all those studies that we put together, it's all about tying it all together. Now, this has always been our county's always been, I don't want to say a total bedroom community, but it's been a large bedroom community to, businesses and companies in Scranton, the Binghamton Vestal area, IBMs, the EJs, all of those industries that were there. And our backbone, like you said, has always been the small business for us here. And how that's affected us, we have communities like Clifford Township right now, which has some of the highest property values in the county. So it all works together, and you gotta be careful of what you do and what you don't do, because you can quickly take those values and destroy those values. So, staying with a small business approach, staying with, trying to support our small businesses is key to our economic stability here.
And I'm biased, in some regard. I think it's a great place to live and work, and there's no doubt about it. You can get, the school districts do a great job. Can we always do a little bit more and do better? Sure, absolutely. There's no doubt about it. But I do think it's a kind of a hidden gem in many ways. And I do, when we get people here from other places, like if they're visiting, we had Canadians come here, and they were looking at another project, and they just are in all the beauty of the area. They have no idea, and
Right.
and even people out of Harrisburg, which they should take a ride up now and then, are definitely You know, "Oh, I didn't realize how nice it was." Yeah, well, you know, you come and visit once in a while, right?
Well, I think one of the disappointing ones was the LDS. You know, we'd heard so much about the growth we were gonna see from that. They were gonna bring in 50,000 people a year and we'd see all kinds of economic growth. And some people are saying, well, you know, it's because we don't have anything, but yet what we find more is they come in on the bus, they get off the bus, they get on the bus, they leave on the bus. You know, they're not really.
There are some businesses that are now starting to kind of figure it out. In meeting with the LDS, what they were really looking for is they're saying, look, we're bringing the people in, we've got the shrine here, whatever. But we're looking to the community to kind of embrace those people. So we're starting to see some of the, some businesses in that area look at specializing because they require certain things, and that's part of it too, you know.
I think you've got one you're working with now over in Oakland Township,
Yeah.
isn't it? Looking to do something on the river.
Correct.
Kind of recreation and visit for
Right,
visitors.
there's a funding request now, they're looking to do some things, maybe, you know, actually put packages together for them, which would include maybe some kayaking, you know, utilizing the facility, the old facility that's there. They come down to the facility. There's a whole bunch of ideas. We have a business plan from the individual, and we also have a funding request that we're evaluating right now from them too.
Good,
So.
good. All right. Anybody else got any questions, or Bill?
Yes, sir.
The census, I was supervisor back in 1990 and 2000, and a couple years ahead, they always send out maps and stuff for corrections, and of course, we send in all kinds of corrections. In 2000, the same mistakes were there. They didn't do anything to correct it, and I don't know if that's still going on or not, but it's just frustrating when you do take time to correct things, and then they don't pay any attention.
No, and they're ballparking stuff a lot of times, and you're right on target. I mean, like yourself, an actual census takers used to come to me and say, look, you know, we kind of feel bad about having to just, they told me, you got a deadline, wrap it up. You know, spend the time it takes to go, you know, to get the right numbers, you know, but whatever. And I just think that at some point, that might be something that we're more, I don't know how, you know, I might be speaking out of turn here, but that may be something that should be more maybe local and involved so that we can, because those numbers are useful when it comes to certain types of resources that are out there.
Any other questions?
One other comment. I spent a lot of time in McKean County as a youth, and I've been back there recently quite a bit. And their weather's similar to ours. Their roads are good. They actually have good roads. That's something we're totally lacking and have been and continue to be, and it's just frustrating. I don't know what you can do about it, but I know Alan spent a lot of time talking to PennDOT and people in Harrisburg, and nothing happens.
Here's what I can tell you, and I know Alan's, you know, whatever, really upset. You know, one thing that I have found over the years is that if you think that a state agency is consistent throughout the state of Pennsylvania, you're completely foolish, okay? It could be DEP, it could be PennDOT, it could be a whole host of agencies. They vary from region to region on what they focus on. Now, McKean may be in a more suitable engineering district, you know what I mean by that is from a rural perspective.
I don't think they have Scranton pulling
Right,
it away.
and there's a vacuum here, okay? There's a vacuum that pulls into an area of higher density, you know, more political influence. I mean, that's the reality of it. I'm just, you know, I'm not speaking out of turn here. And I think that's part of it. I have seen night and day differences between engineering districts and state agencies and what they consider and what they don't consider, you know?
And I don't think, I mean, I don't think you even have to travel as far west as McKean. You can
Oh,
just
yeah.
hit Bradford County, who's in a different district, and see a market difference, which.
And you know,
in
what's
the
interesting,
roads.
and to tell you the truth, back in the 80s, when Bradford County became part of District 4, right? It's
Three.
No.
District 3, this is District 4, excuse me. When it became, and the reason why they did that was because that district, the Montoursville Engineering District, had more of a rural atmosphere, you know, rural counties. Now, they do have Waynesport in that district, but they had, so But what ended up happening is, talking to the manager, you know, the PennDOT maintenance manager at the time, all the good equipment that was in Bradford County got taken out. They took it all down to scrap. Anything that was relatively new, and they had junk for years up there. It was no secret, you know. So, I mean, it's just, they compete amongst themselves, I guess, in some aspect, you know.
Yeah.
But yes, to your point, I think they've gotten better attention since they've been in a more rurally oriented, if you will. Tioga County's in it, you know, Sullivan County's in it.
And, I mean, I spend a lot of time in Erie County, and, I mean, and you have the city of Erie there, and still, everything seems to be,
Yeah.
the road conditions there.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty harsh, and when you talk about wet,
Sure.
it basically rains and or snows, there's some form of precipitation nearly every single day at some point there.
Well, I
So-
will tell you this, Bill, to put a little bit more to the riddle. We have a new PennDOT District 4 manager that took over about a month ago. None of the county commissioners have heard a word from him, nor has he called a meeting to even meet with any of the county commissioners or introduce himself.
That
So I
sounds
will be
encouraging.
making a phone call today to the central office and sharing my displeasure again with District 4 and the central office with Susquehanna County. You would think that somebody new coming in would at least say, hey, let's get all the commissioners together from the 4 counties and have a little meeting and introduce myself and let them know what my plan is. Hasn't happened. So,
Yeah.
anything else? Any other questions or comments? Well, Tony, thank you for coming and sharing with us today. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for the
And
opportunity.
with that, I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Motion by Commissioner Warren, second by Commissioner Arnold to adjourn our meeting at 9:46. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we are adjourned.
Richard Sriracha, we've met before. Good to see you.